As we begin to explore what it means to teach classically and Christianly, I want to make sure that we first lay a strong foundation of principles that must underlie our consistent and effective classroom practices. It's tempting to jump into methodology and to say, what do I need to do? How do I do it? But if we do that first, we'll have inadequate preparation for the variety of situations that we'll face as teachers, no matter what grade level we teach or what subject, and who the individual students are in our classroom, whether we're homeschooling mothers and teachers or in classical charter schools or classical Christian schools. We need to think about these underlying foundations first. Fundamental to any discussion of teaching is a proper anthropology. Who am I, the teacher? Who are my students? What differences does that make? In what ways am I prone to be blind to the inconsistencies between what I believe about people and my actual classroom practice? Whether you're brand new to teaching or have been teaching for years, you will perpetually be repenting of ways in which your dealings with students fall short of the ideal. I'll be making certain assumptions as we proceed in this exploration of who we are as teachers and students in the classroom. First, I shall assume that all people have been created by God and are bearers of His image. Second, I shall assume that we are all fallen and affected by sin in each aspect of ourselves. I will explore some of the implications of these theological truths, but I will not be offering evidence for their truth. A mark of an effective teacher is knowing the students well. Of course, the depth of a teacher's knowledge will differ depending on a variety of factors. The number of students in the class, the length of time you've known the students, the amount of class time you're with them, and so on. That said, there are fundamental things that are true of all students, and teachers must take care to pay attention to them. First, students are whole persons. They have physical bodies, they are emotional beings, they are spiritual creatures. They are intelligent. Each of these realities has implications for our classrooms. There are also different models for looking at who the teacher is. Is the teacher simply the dispenser of knowledge? Is the teacher a facilitator? Or is the teacher a master at the learning? How we think about the teacher is going to make a big difference in how we operate in our classroom. Let's look at what it would mean if the teacher is just the dispenser of knowledge. That's a high pressure thing. If as a teacher you think, oh boy, I better know it all because I have to teach my students everything. It's a little scary thought. And it also assumes various things. It's very teacher-centric. So the class would become about what I know as the teacher and not about what the students are wondering about. That won't matter. I will just need to dispense my knowledge. If we want to think of a little word picture or an illustration of this, think of the teacher holding a pitcher of knowledge and the student's brain being opened up and the teacher is pouring in. This would imply a pretty passive student. In fact, the best student in this scenario is one who's not asking too many questions and one who is sitting still in the seat and not challenging much, but just receiving. In this scenario, information is actually the king, and the focus of the classroom becomes the what of what we know. This becomes sort of a meal of information, and as one classical educator, Charlotte Mason, has said, a meal of information is to the brain what a meal of sawdust would be to the stomach. Not very appetizing. Many classrooms are based around this model of the teacher, where the students sit passively and take notes quickly and are tested then on the information that the teacher has given to them. A second model of the teacher would be to think of ourselves as facilitators. Maybe a little illustration of this would be a circle of people where the teacher is sitting at the circle as well, in the circle as well, and the students are having a discussion and a conversation, and the teacher is just simply keeping that going. In this model, the teacher is an equal participant in the class. The students are the center of this model, and we would probably, at best case, say that we have shared knowledge around the table, and probably at worst case, the shared ignorance. One of the characteristics of this teacher model is that the goals would be fuzzy because the teacher is not necessarily knowing where that conversation is going to go. It's going to go where the students take the conversation. The third model of the teacher is one of a master with an apprentice. So in this case, let's think of a cobbler, and the cobbler will be sitting at his bench working with leather and wood and nails and a hammer, and beside him will sit his apprentice. In this situation, the apprentice, if he's very new at this, might be handed a piece of leather and maybe pounding nails into the leather, figuring out how leather works. The master will be making shoes next to him. And in this model, the teacher and the student are focused in the same direction. The master obviously has more experience and understanding of how shoes ought to be made and how leather and wood and nails work together and what are the qualities of each of those materials. The apprentice is learning those things. There will certainly be tasks with a purpose in this model. So the master may just have the apprentice be cutting leather today and to find out how those things would be, how different leathers work with the cutting tool. The master has assigned him a task to do, but it has a goal to it, and the master knows in which direction they want to be heading. The focus is actually outside both the teacher and the student in this model. And if you can think about what the cobbler might go through on any given day, there will actually be times when he's lecturing, little short lectures. He's going to be telling his apprentice some things about making shoes. He's going to give him information that the apprentice can't get any other way. There will be times of discussion. The master may ask the apprentice some questions and about what he's learned, and he may guide some of those questions to expose some of the apprentice's misunderstandings about how shoes should be made. There will be opportunity for the apprentice to ask questions, and there will be opportunity actually for the apprentice to discover things on his own. There will be a difference. The master will know that he could tell the apprentice that if you nail leather in a certain way, that the customer won't be happy when he's poked by the nail. But it might be more helpful if the apprentice makes himself a pair of shoes and finds that out. So there is going to be plenty of various kinds of didactic activities going on in this model, but they're going to be a back and forth. And I believe that this would be the healthiest model for us to think about as we're teaching our students. Let's go back and talk about our students themselves and what they bring to the table as whole people. They certainly come in physical bodies, and depending upon your setting and the age group you're teaching, that's going to affect your classroom in a variety of ways. If you're teaching kindergartners, you're of course going to know that you're not going to sit in a seat with no activity for long periods of time. Their bodies aren't ready for that. And it's not a denial of good self-discipline to actually acknowledge that and give them good breaks and recess and all kinds of play. When they're older, I think we need to remember that teenagers don't learn very well if they're hungry. And so providing opportunities in the school day or in the sessions, not necessarily to snack all the time, because that's not maybe a good habit either, but making sure that they're properly fed will help you as the teacher to have their attention. We also know that sometimes our students are ill, and in a classroom that can make a difference. And demanding the same things of them is not a way to honor their physical bodies when they're not feeling 100%. Each of you in your situations, in the age group that you're teaching, in the subjects, in the number of students you have in your classroom, in the type of school you have, are going to have to think through the implications of what it means that your students have bodies, have physical bodies. And you're going to need to plan your classroom activities, even your schedule, to take that into account. We know our students are also emotional beings. They come with concerns and delights, excitement. We all probably have had the experience of being in a room full of children when it's close to Christmas or their birthdays, and we know that the emotions run high, and that is going to affect us as teachers. We can't ignore that and act as if it makes no difference to them as our students. We know that it does. We also know that at different times, students are having emotional struggles with one another in our classroom. They're social creatures, and what happens at recess comes into our classrooms. What we need to acknowledge that is part of what we as teachers need to work with in order to help our students to learn well. We need to be knowing them enough so that we notice their emotions. We can't be callous to what's going on in their lives in that way. The social side of our students is also very evident in the classroom. And of course, even if your classroom is the kitchen table, you will see that in your children. Their relationships in the classroom are going to affect how they learn. And certainly that's going to be different at different ages as they grow and become more aware of their peers in a variety of ways. That social aspect of your classroom is important. It's going to even have implications on things like seating. Do you seat two best friends together? That's a great question. You'll probably have to deal with that question at some point. And sometimes those two best friends are going to encourage one another towards good learning. And at other times, those best friends are going to distract one another from that good learning. So you as a teacher are going to have to watch and navigate those social relationships in your classroom. Another really important aspect of every student is they are part of a family. And your relationship with their parents is going to be crucial to your relationships with the students. You're in a partnership, so to speak, with those parents as they have you as the teacher of their children. The parents are going to bring a certain knowledge about their child to the table, to this partnership, that you will never be able to have as the teacher. They know their child in ways that we can't ever know their children. At the same time, you see their children interacting in ways that they don't. Most parents don't have frequent exposure to their children when they're in groups of 15 or 18 or 20 other students, and you get that view of their child. If you've been teaching for many years, you may have seen hundreds of second graders or hundreds of eighth graders, and you know what the typical eighth grader tends to be tempted by or needs to know. You know what the typical eighth grader already does know or already can do. So you bring that to the table, whereas most parents don't know. If it's their first child especially, they don't know what's typical in second grade or in eighth grade. And that's something that you bring to the partnership and can share with them. The most important aspect of this relationship with parents and the partnership is that you know you're committed to getting to know their child well, and that you're committed to loving their child. When I say that you're committed to loving their child, I mean by that you're committed to the child's long-term well-being. So the decisions that you make that affect their child need to come out of that well thought through desire to have the child be growing to be a flourishing adult. In this partnership with parents, it would be no surprise to anyone to think about that there won't always be 100% agreement. When one thinks about a father and a mother talking about their children, we all know that there's also not 100% agreement. And so that doesn't have to negate the partnership or ruin the partnership. The partnership is actually based on that commitment to know and love the child. In this relationship with parents, as you think about that, if you're teaching in a school, you need to go into this partnership prepared to allow them to question you. This goes to who we are as people. We tend to want to defend ourselves, but this relationship is so important, and it feeds into who we are as teachers and who our students are in our classroom, that you need to go into this committed to establish a good partnership with these parents. One thing that's important to remember as we go into teaching, particularly if you're new, is we can be tempted to think these students are somehow going to fill our emotional cups. If we've been teaching a long time, we know that students don't make good cup fillers. And so you need to be committed in your life to being finding your identity in Christ and having your emotional and social needs met by other adults and in a church community and your family, because these students in your class are going to need things from you. And of course, there's much delight. But if you're looking for them to fill your cup, you will be sorely disappointed over the years. There will be students who don't show proper respect to you. And your response to that has to come out of you not needing their respect. Of course, you want it, and it's the right thing for them to do. And you would establish that in your classroom. But if it's your emotional need to be respected by them, you'll find yourself responding with defensiveness or anger, with just simply a power play to get them to respect you. So this is something that's very important for us to remember as teachers as we think about who we are and who our students are, that we're not looking to them for too much in our lives. We want to enjoy them as parents enjoy children. And if we've raised children, we know that they are, you give much more than you get in that relationship in terms of emotional and social needs being met, especially when they're young. So as you go into your teaching, it's again very important to remember who you are. What kind of model are you going to use and think about when you're in the classroom? What kind of dispenser of information, in what context and setting are you going to dispense information? And how are you going to think of your students and what their needs are, their whole person needs and their fullness?